a dear friend of mine, not a dear friend, but a friend.
Hello, everybody. Hi, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is Left Bank Books presents the fantastic poets Kenzie Allen, Tola Sylvan, and Marc-Anthony Valle. Some notes before we begin. Tonight's event is only possible because of all of your support. When you support Left Bank Books, your money goes directly into our local economy, so it helps us keep the streets paved and the parks amazing and everything that we love about St. Louis. It also, of course, helps us out as a store and allows us to support authors and put on events such as this. So thank you all for shopping local and for coming out tonight in the heat. We at Left Bank Books are always hard at work planning new events for readers of all ages. Of note, next week on September 5th, we'll be joined by Janelle Bassett, who has a new short story collection, Thanks for the Riot. We've got a ton of stuff going on all the time for readers of all ages, so left-bank.com, you can find our full events calendar. For tonight's event, like I said, we are really excited to have a trio of fantastic writers joining us this evening. So I'm going to introduce all of them in one go here, and then we'll pass it off for some amazing poetry. So first, Kenzie Allen is a Haudenosaunee poet and multimodal artist, the recipient of the '92 NY Discovery Prize and inaugural James Welch Prize for Indigenous Poets, the 49th Parallel Award in Poetry, broadside prizes from Sundress Publications, fellowships from Vermont Studio Center, Aspen Writers Foundation, and inaugural Indigenous Nations Poets. A finalist for the National Poetry Series, her work has appeared in Poetry Magazine, Boston Review, Narrative, Paris Reviews, The Daily, Best New Poets, Poets.org, and other venues. Born in West Texas, she now shares her time between Ontario, Norway, and the Oneida Reservation in Green Bay, Wisconsin. She's a direct descendant of the Oneida Nation, and her new poetry collection is Cloud Missives, which Diane Seuss calls a masterwork of self-reclamation and survival through love. Our second poet tonight, Tola Sylvan, is a poet and writer from Massachusetts. Her work appears or is forthcoming in Poetry Northwest, Plowshares Poetry, and elsewhere. And to start us off this evening, we have the wonderful Marc-Anthony Valle, an MFA student in poetry at our very own WashU in St. Louis. Yeah. So everybody, please join me in welcoming, to start us off, Marc-Anthony, but also the rest of our wonderful poets tonight.
Everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much to Kenzie and Eduardo for getting us to join Kenzie in this reading tonight. Can I be heard? Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much. This first poem is called Let's Assume We Are Continuously. Let's assume we are continuously, a reel-to-reel running even through the unnotable nights. Like those where the ambulance comes, like every other Wednesday, and parks in front of the coffee shop with its lights on, a magician pulling scarves of 3 colors out of his sleeve again and again. After a tree, the sea. To change can only be a feeling, in the past tense. There is a gaggle of line weights for flounder fishing in my pocket, and next to it, a coin purse. I am changed. I'm changed. I am that silent middle which mediates from bad to worse. It's a funny thing to think I'm not persuaded, not even in his button-ups. I found it difficult to take them off or watch her hands as she'd unbutton me. With playful flair, she'd throw it in a pile. I see him for a moment in the pile. My father, the hollow of the pupil that lets out in, the crumpled scaffold of shirt or coat. My father, the hollow crater which migrating butterflies over São Paulo still avoid, it once being a mountain. My father, the hollow of the pupil that lets out in, out in. I tried to sew the loose hem back into the curve that held the cuff so well. My love suggests we buy some of my own, asks at what cost I walk with extra weight. I wore them. They lost his smell. I'm left with my urge to make him near, what nearness proves. Yeah, please. Thank you. His features unfold in front of me. The 5 deer pause. Can't I feign unfeeling for a moment more? I will be so good to you if you let me. I will throw myself in front of that which is inhospitable and strange again, but please not now. The deer begin to move from the canary grass over the pavement path into more canary grass, like an underlying crossing over the spine shadow of a Xerox copy. My father rests in 4 seas and more time zones, and ash washes off easier than I needed it to. Nothing is neutral anymore. Everything tethered to him, and often for no reason. The crawling absence of expression on the face, which signals. The deer are complicit, somehow, and shameless, with their valve cap eyes. The first 3 have crossed. It's never the right time for this. Another now, and the ground never seems like the right ground to weep on. 2 nights ago, I had a sex dream about one of my closest friends. She was curled up like a cat on my chest asking, could we please? Last night, I had a dream that my father was still dead. He was in a burlap sack that I had to dispose of. I said to the bag, oh, I never asked you. Did you like Bob Dylan? He didn't respond. Things are getting odd. I haven't looked at his pictures this morning. This morning, I'm trying to do a reading of the dreams. My cereal spells ooh. So it is interested, but not in offering solutions. I eat some of the cereal, so it is still interested, but quieter. Ooh. This poem is called Seeking Love During the Biocrisis, and it's a series of personal advertisements. Early 20s prog rock fan in deep grief, looking for someone to help translate dreams into the real world and unproductive emotions into fruitful ones. Good listener, but easy forgetter. Fascinated by the in-betweenness of red. Invested in whatever is blossoming between others and want. Mid-30s leasing agent looking for a personal trainer to take Florida trips with. Sight unseen. I'm pink-skinned, but there's more to it than that. Hate smokers unless I'm drinking. When you're desiring to feel blessed, I will bless and give you. Email attached. Pierced-eared fabric arts student looking for someone to loom and swoon with. But life is more. There's something about knowing you're a mid-revolution that makes the waiting more infuriating. Tri-state area. On-time person. Attached, a rendering of a young Tutankhamun. Email me what his eyes say. Mid-60s semi-retired widow with classical name seeking partner who has memorized popular mnemonic phrases. Black Bear Lay, Grizzly Run for the Hills, etc. They think of the right thing to say, inevitably only after crossing state lines. No hikes. Skill with Roman numerals appreciated, but by no means required. Upstate. Do you have leftover words for a departed loved one? Look no further. We hold a little God in our hands. Try our patented mystic tripartite communication structure. Your hand to my eye, and I to them. Zoom appointments available. Accomplished entrepreneur in his mid-30s selling unscented fragrance additives, looking for someone to hitch my wagon to. I mean, a live-in partner. They're not pheromones exactly. Too much of life is moved, afraid of bed bugs and surprise addendums to interpersonal agreements. Remembers past sex acts passively for maintenance. Won't respond to emails without photographs. Masked funeral wailers available for front yard, backyard, and patio house call performances of public grief. We're sorry that it had to happen during these unprecedented times, but we're glad you found us. We don't discriminate. Discounts available upon receiving a clipping of this ad. Late 20s remote HR rep fretting the basis of kindness. I know, those damn kids with their computers. Seeking someone to hold my arm while I walk. Seeking someone to help me draft a text to the well-groomed early 30s mailman on my walk I've had my eye. The sky was where it was supposed to be, and lately I haven't been, able to tell the spiders from their wisps. One parachuted into your coffee, and instead of dumping it, you stirred and said, I am unencumbered by solitude. Said it is easier to incorporate with something you can touch, so let's not speak so much. As for days, I can count on you're in all of them. Quit retreating when I say so. Quick salutations to the flatmate who pops into frame as you open the door, but come back. Before I eat the cold, papayas in the icebox. Night baseball. I've always wanted to know how they feel, those things that I'm not supposed to touch, but I've never wanted to reach out and touch them. My friend, the zoo vet, euthanizes the jellyfish. They both wear light purple gloves. She uses a funnier word than euthanize. I'm afraid of dying, but not of death, asymptotes in the bark of the same tree. I wake from dreams of falling, but not of impact. Oh, jellyfish, little ghost of electricity. It drifts, then piles in brambles at the bottom of the transition tank. If I don't do this, she says, it will continue to fall apart forever. Its paleness is the same as the satin pad one powders their nose with, its pellucid crown, the mirror in the powder case. She packs up. She asks me how I am, and I tell her a story. We remain on time for the baseball game. People on the Jumbotron always make the same face when they see themselves. We never get old. I don't doubt your blackness, but I see you, like through a glass creamily, she said, peeling at the inverse of the phrase. Not the Kinder egg, but contents. Not the hollow wafers, either, those cartoon eyes in a thicket, but the milk-dyed chocolate they're suspended in. Later, when there was no impossibility and I needed to be reassured, yearning is your word, and I didn't use it, but I will. I will have my cow. He won't be called a bull. Bulls are not as gentle as my cow will be. He will have his limp and I will have mine. He will not be interested in mythology like I am. He will call them my little lies. Little lies that in their conception float for a moment in the dead air, indecisive, and quick as rain find a lip to canker. He will not be interested in nails or hair that continue to grow after death. An illusion, he will say. He will explain how the skin prunes, then puckers in so the nails feign growing. Stale time makes no talons. He will love to say stuff like that. I will let him wear my boots when I am lonely, on his front two legs, and I will never even make him dance. He will be the delight of my eye as he is. Even so, some days he will be lonesome. Some days, when he will be lonesome, I will tell him he has horns, large horns, how your ears have become so shadowed by your horns. What gnarled horns. You are so fearsome. That I should see you in my barn, not knowing you are mine, what I would do besides collapse in fear, I am not sure. This is my last poem, and it's called The Nerve. Thanks again to Kenzie for organizing. The nerve will recloak itself, I'm told, if not slowly. My father called me his name, but blurry. My father called me cowlick, loosely, silo, treatise. My father called me other things, which are mine, all mine. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much to Left Bank, and it's an honor to be here reading Marc-Anthony because my first poem I wrote after a visit to a museum on a very rainy day. I returned to the pink painting, but only in my plans. In my plans, I am cutting through the light of the unvisited park library. I am reading in a coffee shop on the other side of the city. I am taking a train to nowhere with the hope that it will be somewhere. But in my heart, I cannot anymore feel no place with a picture. So I return to the pink painting, which is a picture for sure. I saw it only the other week, standing in a sea of people. I could smell their perfumes and their colognes. Drops dripped from the folded umbrellas forgotten in the underworld at their hips. I saw the pink painting and wanted to love it. I thought by standing before it for a long time, I'd love it properly. And maybe I have, because today, when there's nothing else left, here it is. Somnambule. And it's dedicated to Cosimo, who is the little boy who climbs up into a tree and never comes back down in The Baron and the Trees by Covey. Somnambule. On Earth, I had nothing to do but bleed. We had gotten into the habit of sharing dreams. The mud in the favela, trucksters, a lake. When I asked, you told me it had been at a lake. You had been picnicking with family. On the east side, behind the red lights, I was cold in a dress and high on future memory. Somehow I already knew I wouldn't ever forget it, the way the petals came down hard. I was delirious. Time suckled itself. So many mornings you told me you had spent all night in an orchard, between the soft touches of leaves. In your arms I was like an overripe peach, a bit of the brittle and the heartwood. I knew you would never come down for me. Birthday poem. It is not my birthday, but today I walk by the cold shrubs of my town's finest lane, popping birthday cake jelly beans into my mouth one by one. How spectacular, the way we've reduced an event into a little waxen egg. It is speckled like a robin's egg, pink, blue, yellow, orange. It even has the taste of the bend where the cake turned crusty caramel and brittle. Earlier, a very famous man came into my place of work with his girlfriend. I could feel their gravitas gravitating. Their jackets were preternaturally refined. The girl wore a swoop of thick eyeliner and little else. They had creamy skin. They were both fine. Last night was not the worst night of my life. And if you're curious what the finest lane is, it's this road right here. To the fair. After an session with them. There are people who will not believe you that your saliva maw softened at the ridge of her nose, and that you hesitated before crunching her cranium. Smelling in her hair her shampoo, you lumbered off, almost sheepish, showing that you were mad. Any scientist could have said so, though, from your haunch and your height and the dark mud spike of your underpelt. Go pick up salmon now in the river, with their hidden pink, indistinguishable as instinct. 3 things. I have an admirer. I found him in the grass. He reminded me at first of those little wibbly-wobbly things that dug into the dirt in Doll's stories. When I was a kid, I had no imagination. I didn't know a rhinoceros could kill a parent off. But I knew intimately what it was like inside that juicy wall. It was a wall like I had inside myself, a sacred wall, cave painting with child's fingers. Tonight, I see through a set of bones into the other side of the tall house, fog and a fog sky. The lights remind me of ways I could slice myself. In wintertime, no one can contest that it's cozy. Island of the Seals. A critic calls her face impassive. She's been looking for her brother, who's been lost at sea, swept away in a bespoke floating cradle. Jamie, he's called, from behind the rocks in the hills of an island grown hinnish. Jamie thinks he has found God. He hears his name in the wind as he runs the length of an Irish field full of wildflowers, his little dick bouncing. He keeps running whenever she gets close. I always want to stop here, before we bring Jamie back to the warm hearth, before his wild hair is flaming in front of the fire, before he's bundled and loved and sung to. And the song is always like this. This is what happened. This is what happened to you. Just a couple. Portrait of the Self as Extraction. As a note, in conflicting reports, the coast of Brazil is depicted as both paradise and enemy. I like the slant of your smile. The dragon is me. I treat you like a jewel. Many facets reflect you back to me. The diamond was taken from the forest. The men took it overseas. There is a palm tree in your heart, its fingers feathered wings. They want to take your 4 teeth, the ones invisible to me. You're wise beyond your years. Your ears are soft between my teeth. What's most colorful is most dangerous. Apple, Adam, Eve. Be led. My mother taught me that men were afraid of women because we could bleed. Scintillating, an army of fish-shaped wounds heads into battlefield. Straw grasses tinged like wine, and sighs instead of screams. Rinsing my cotton underwear, how many times have I thought, so tied to a tradition, out damn spot. Sin lives in our cognition like chlorophyll lives in leaves. My first lover didn't mind, but I didn't want to be touched. Letting Blood, my high school teacher with the child porno nip-slip on his projector screen, helped the Aztecs feel at ease. How can you trust what is not willing to feel? And I played a game of religion or trust in my own body, cutting more wounds than I could count, refusing to be just. High femininity, or giving, or must, vulnerable but weak. I wanted to walk that common dark path. I wanted to feel, even in the dark air, dark unseen reason, more of a good breeze. And the last one is called They Feel or They Are. The night was blue and green, which was not unusual for a night, but it was unusual to think so. The cat's tail, puddle-lined black and white, noosed in on its body, and the leaves fell from their abodes, Somewhere far off, a girl thought of pink cake, of layers, as she rode up in a gray-brown elevator. Will I ever? She wondered. She considered, and when will? She loved love. On the one hand, nature himself linked. To when and to will. I have give, she thought, and it was. Then, why is it lovely? She said, thank you for asking.
Thank you so much for sharing those beautiful poems. I've been so looking forward to hearing your work, and you were so lovely. Such warm imagery and beautiful voices. Thank you so much to Left Bank for having me. And this is from Cloud Missives. Just a little bit of background about the book. There are 4 sections. The first section is called Pathology. And deals with the body and the marks that are left on the body by our favorite ways, as well as the marks that are not left by things that are like mental illness and different kinds of traumas that we go through that don't necessarily leave their mark on the body. The second section is called Manifest, referring a little bit to manifest destiny, as well as to manifesting the self or the truer self in light of pop culture stereotypes. The third section is Letters I Don't Send, which is sort of about what happens if you take on the meanest names you've ever been called, like succubus and harpy and evil queen, that kind of thing. Evil queen's kind of cool, but if you were to take on that moniker, what power could you take back? And the final section is love songs, which are exactly what they sound like to the world around us. So I will actually start with a poem from the Manifest section. And this one is called, and just a little bit of background, or I should say, Seguli Swagwe. Hello to all of you, my friends. Kenzie Yukyat, Nkweweni, Yaptani Wagidaloda. Skanagoga, Oknyodhadi. Hello to all of you, my friends. My name is Kenzie. I am Oneida of the Turtle Clan. I asked, are you with peace? Which is referring to the great law of peace, but is sometimes a hard question to answer on any given day. So I also asked, how is it going along? You have 3 options. It's going along good. It's going along not so good. It's going along as good as possible. Let's see it. How is it? We'll try to make it all like this afterwards. It's okay. No pressure. No pressure. All right. So this is how to be a real Indian. The first time someone asks you how Indian you are, lie. On the blacktop, the soccer field, tell them 100% your grandmother lived on the res, or you were born there, hooked up to machines, running on bad generators, in a bad hospital, in a bad part of town. Say you dream in Oneida at night. Show and tell them Rose Rock and Kachina. Give them exactly what they ask for the first time. In the 3rd grade, when your class suggests 10 Little Indians for the Thanksgiving theme, true story, offer to teach them the dances you don't know but should. Swallow hard. Imagine your ancestors, the ones you see each day when you get home from school, staring down at you from the walls of your grandmother's house, draped in their turbans and regalia, Tecumseh, Red Cloud. Imagine their eyes, not sad, but fascinated by the evenness of your buckskin fringe, the wild neon in your store-bought feathers. Sing, 10 Little Indians. Fan your hand across your mouth. Say, how? The second time someone asks how Indian you are, embellish. If you find out your mother's mother's father was the son of a chief, tell them your mother was a princess. Tell them your mother sang you songs at night while rocking the cradle in her native tongue, but she's forgotten all of it now. Tell them your tribe waits for you. wants to embrace you as one of their own. Tell them you are loved by your tribe. After all, there is an agency for everything. Call the BIA. Aren't you on the list? Dawes, allotment, can't you find your grandpa? There are no compound noun names here. When you find the man who might have cradled your mother's small head in his hands, you must sniff out the whole line. Begat and begat and begat, married, then divorced, then they split up the property and moved to Oklahoma. All the people who passed down the blood you wanted to be rid of, sometimes the blood you wished could multiply. Give them names. Tally up their fractions. The third time you're asked how Indian you are, decide it doesn't matter exactly. Say an eighth, say a 32nd. Claim to be Choctaw or Cherokee. Claim to be a princess too. Talk about quantum as though trying to find a way to name yourself. Go back to the res. Brenda's gotten clearance to open up a bar just in time for your coming of age. Take your white boyfriend and play pool with him amid a cloud of smoke, where he will chat up the locals, where he will talk about enterprise and fair trade. At the powwow, buy turquoise and the tail of a fox, and soft white cow skin for your mother's moccasins. Eat fry bread every day of your life if you can. On the way home, a Chickasaw will sit down next to you on the plane with his hair in 2 black braids and cowrie shells around his leathery neck. Despite eagerness, opportunity, the sudden improbable phenomenon of 2 live Indians on the same plane together at the same time, say nothing. If he says something first, stay quiet, because you aren't just 2 live Indians together on the same plane at the same time. You're 1 Indian and a fraud, flying toward Delaware. The 4th time, the 5th time, the 8th time they ask you how Indian you are, your mouth is so heavy. Let it hang open for a moment so the spirits can enter. Let the woman who had your name and died before you were born come into your body and speak the wisdom. Let her grandmother willow you. Let your head hang over the stump of Chief Powhatan, ready to be bludgeoned by your own father for love. Take Maria Tall Chief into your limbs, eagle graceful, turtle strong. Try to imagine your own face on the face of a gold coin, the baby on your back as recognizable as the way you point the way, and shut that open mouth. Make its flatness stretch towards centuries of silence. Lead the men down the great river to whatever they seek. And now a poem from, I think I only have 1 poem from this particular section, but this is the title poem from the first section, Pathology. And this is based on, most of this book is actually based on a lot of things that I learned in St. Louis. I went to WashU for my undergraduate and UMSL as well. I took a forensic anthropology class at UMSL. I did my archaeological field school out at Cahokia Mounds. And I studied primatology at Woostel and at the St. Louis Zoo. So I've kind of picked some poems that speak to a few of those things, and my phone number still starts with 314. So this is Pathology. I used to have a depression on the ring finger of my right hand from where I would crush a pencil against it while writing. You tell me the body makes room for our favorite ways. Bones thicken like pearls from the heft of a child. The teeth will alter their common alignment to pocket a pipe stem, to mention malnutrition. The twisted foot betrays a man bent in the mines. The chipped skull is a keyhole to let angels in. The cracked rib, healed over or partially knit, proclaims care or some survival. The pelvic girdle, a vessel widens, billows at its sutures, whereas the male's remains heart-shaped and rigid. Were I left-handed, my right tibia would be lighter and more slender. Were I beaten enough, even this would be written in my bones. And speaking of bones, this is a poem called Repatriation, which also the epigraph, which I'm not going to read because it's like a lot of legalese, but just kind of try to imagine the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, which talks about repatriating human remains to their descendants, because you still have that relationship with your ancestors, like whether they've walked on yesterday or whether they've walked on 1,000 years ago, they're still your relatives. So this is a very important act that was only passed in 1990. So a lot of these laws protecting Indigenous rights have only been passed. Oh, I'm a millennial, so that's not 20 years ago, that's like what, 30 years ago? Yeah. Okay, so this is repatriation. Sun-bleached bone and sticks wrapped with the skins in which we loved them, or nestled and charred by the broken hearth, clutching the wing of a swan to ward spirits, or wormwood, beechwood, cherry oak, pine, slatted and nailed neatly under 6 feet or in hard times, even stacked above one another so that the bodies collapse like floors of ruined buildings, sighing into the coffins below. Or piled, 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 nameless, done in, piled, 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 buried over quickly in the night, or in personal collections, in trophy cases, or in pieces, piled, cataloged and inked with the smallest numbers along the cranial spline, packed amid boxes in the basement of the Longhouse Museum until proper funding can be acquired for a proper display. Red taped and returned, gathering dust, far from the longhouses you knew. Speaking of archaeology, a bit of a chip on my shoulder about this. So this is, sometimes when I'm sad, I think about Indiana Jones. Sometimes when I'm sad, I think about Indiana Jones doing actual archaeology. Setting up a grid system, settling tiny spheres into the red clay at every corner, strung white line dangling above invited earth. In this scene, he shakes hands with a cragged Cree whose face holds its own stratigraphy. What is found there will be time immemorial, disregarded. A land bridge is far more appealing. And in this one, Indy has a soft mouth, easy with apologies, and the temple isn't always coming down around our ears. In this one, Professor Jones, dashing in glasses, teaches a whole entire class, and without even once mentioning the word discovery. The frontier, he reminds us, is someone else's backyard. He uses slides in which Native people, who else, at least are smiling. He uses the word dine, says seguli to a woman with long dark hair sitting in the chair's chair. He does all the work he's asked to do. He grades his own papers. He applies for grants and pins each rejection letter to his office door. In this one, he is a young man who does not pick up arrowheads. In this one, he surveys the burial mound, adjusts the transit with gentle hands, maps each contour with wonder before setting shuttle to soil. He Munsell charts the colors of the earth like paint swatches, the kind he put up on the wall last week at his wife's, oh fine, my request. In this scene, he does not light the bar on fire. In this scene, he ends the chase early before the fruit cart is overturned. In this scene, he looks out for his Indian guide. There was that one time he returned some glowing rocks generously to their mother tribe. So maybe in this one, he stops at the entrance. He does not force his way inside. He carefully notes the condition of the site, leaves the gold statues in their glorious, supposed disuse. But what story would that make? To leave a thing better off alone? And now a couple of poems from the third section, the Letters I Don't Send. Letters I Don't Send, number 2. She had decided at last to become the villain. Floor-grasping sequined lame on offer in Joanne's bargain bin. Smoke bombs handy in the basement, where he'd left his stash of pyrotechnics and an empty plastic whiskey jug. Even the crows seemed cooperative, now drawn to the shine of her malice. Her fingernails, sharp, narcissistic and manipulative. Weren't those your exact words? She becomes her own reflection. She asks her reflection, what's fair? Letters I Don't Send, number 6. Some mornings, the queen emerges from her bedroom, bleary, bruised, sclera spangled in red, where capillaries burst from sudden force, all the outward signs sparing, skin paler than she's ever seen it, a bone china patterned in blue and gray. She enters the golden carriage, surveys her domain. Didn't she know there'd be grief lingering in those lands? Crying all over the countryside, wheat fields bent low, forests gone fallow, thatched roof houses drooped in rain, relentless rain. A storm, she's told, surely of her own making. And yet, I remember those many days of downpour as welcome friend, my own likeness shone back to me, a sky I could finally recognize, be recognized by, a garden of cinders. She wanders the deepest woods she can find. She makes her offerings to the earth. And then I'll end with a couple of love songs. The first one, everything in this poem is true, and I learned it all from Robert Sussman at Washington University in St. Louis. Fabulous anthropologist, primatologist, and you can actually find a lot of these folks, a lot of these primates at the St. Louis Zoo, so do stop by there. Greatest zoo on earth, right? Amazing. Okay, so this is all I need to know about love I learned from my fellow primates. Those who study marmosets will tell you, wait, just a moment. Beyond the rustle of leaves as one goes by, you can hold your breath. Its mate is sure to come after. I never imagined a pairing for life, a call like a favorite song. Yet here we are, preening our chosen on each limb curving from the bough behind the glass. Or on the park bench, or nestled in the highest place one can reach. Titi monkeys, too, pair bond in principle. In respite, they stay close and note the absence of the other. Tails twined together below their branch, as if the body were a hand with one finger, longing to interlock. Alas, for the man of the forest, Pongo Pygmaeus, he travels so often alone. Maybe it's just his way, or the city's encroachment, as power lines cut through the trees. The ringtails with their soot-black masks pile up arboreal and warm in what scientists refer to as lemur balls, queens surrounded by their harem. There will be dances for dominance, a pecking order toppled and revised again, in the flurry of lion-tailed macaques leaping from tallest rock to lowest ground and back, kings deposed in sudden upsets common to their species. There is the way the children are carried dearly by father, mother, perhaps the whole troop. How we and the orange-furred orangs tend little ones the longest. How our teeth are not so different, adaptive and broadly used, same sensitive mouth, same flipped lips to bear anger or grin. The gorilla who cradled an orphaned kitten all night in his arms. The bonobo who saw her mirror self and shied away. The teenage chimps throwing kiss and tell parties in the canopy in wild exploration. I've learned to close my eyes halfway to pleasure as furrows are scratched into my back. We all have our little joys, our quickenings to rage, our lairs and what we make room for within. We cleverly co-opt whatever tools might come to hand. We mourn and cower and beat our chests. We press our face to the window and try to make out exits or the faces peering back. We search every territory, every meadow's edge, for those who might welcome a bite to the neck. Maybe we delude ourselves that we'll only need the one in a life fraught, a world imperiled, a habitat slowly and quickly reduced to ash. Somewhere in the dark, a man grips his pillow girlfriend hard. A man settles his hand on my thigh like a lithe tail extended. But I turn away for better sleep, only to dream of the closeness of leaves, of the emerald light flickering over ours, fading into a forest shared. And I have one more, and I just want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Left Bank. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Tola. Thank you, Marc-Anthony, for sharing your beautiful words with us. I'll say. So this is Love Song to Banish Another Love Song. And it is based on a Spanish proverb, which I'll kind of summarize as, how do you get over a bad relationship? You gotta bang out a nail with another nail. So there's your premise. So love song to banish another love song. One nail drives out another. My hammer was ready long before my hands. How a waning moon betides a crescent. How I knew after the deluge, the quake, the sick bed, the all-body bruise, I needed kindness. The edge of the lagoon forges the lagoon. The withered leaves beg water, but not a drowning, upended sky, river weeds as only refuge, entombment in the silt. I awoke one morning with a need to awaken, as though I could smell flowers distant on the wind, the end of endless night, the fog no longer filling up the brick. Where was the mortar? I craved the open field, a fallow birth in which to birth myself. What I thought fit me only fit the outline of fear. If I was unlovable, I became unlovable. If unworthy, I became that too. But in a sunset, hours from my own, I gave myself back to the flock, dipped my tongue in a new mouth, ocean deep. Some days I say, you saved me, but it was my tread at the doorway and out into the road. Whose kindness did I need? A sandbar lines the cove. The beaten path defines the cultivated clover patch. Above me, a swallow kites its wings to the angle of the incoming gale. My lodestone once broken. The ink of my map a ruined blur, undone by the flood I'd thought to outrun, a rabbit with no thicket, only the concrete hollow of an open storm drain. Only then could I hear the nearby stream. Outside, the lavender, the bees greet each thistle gently, the sun, a break in the trees, birdsong, a clarion, kulning call, invitation, an apple fallen right at my feet. Thank you, you're welcome.
Thank you so much to all of our poets, and thank you all for being here tonight. We've got copies of Cloud Missives for sale at the front desk. If you haven't got your copy yet, go ahead and grab one. Kenzie's wonderful parents brought some cookies and refreshments that are in the back of this next room over. So thank you all so much for joining us. Kenzie will be signing books at this desk here, so give me a second to move some chairs, and we will get that going as well. Thank you all.
All right.
Oh.